The diplomatic facade ambassador Elena Vasquez straightened her navy blue uniform as she walked through the crystal corridors of Harmony Station. The massive diplomatic complex floated in neutral space between 5 major star systems, its walls made of transparent aluminum that showed the swirling nebula outside. Elena had been Earth's primary trade representative for 4 years now, and she knew every hallway of this place like her own home. Today was different, though. Today felt like the end of something important. Elena was a small woman with dark hair, pulled back in a professional bun. Her brown eyes held a quiet intelligence that most aliens mistook for weakness. She spoke softly and always said, "Please and thank you," even when other species were openly rude to her. The galactic community saw her as the perfect example of human submission to superior civilizations. They had no idea how wrong they were. The Galactic Trade Council met in the central chamber, a massive circular room with seats designed for 12 different species. Each delegation had spent centuries earning their place at this table. Humans had only been members for 6 years, and most aliens still treated them like unwelcome guests at a dinner party. Elena took her seat at the human station, a modest desk with basic translation equipment and a single computer terminal. Around her, the other delegates settled into their elaborate chairs and floating platforms. Some needed special atmospheres, others required anti-gravity fields or temperature controls that cost more than most human cities. High Counselor Zixthera of the Kythera Empire dominated the room as always. She was 9 feet tall with silver skin that reflected light like polished metal. Her forearms moved in graceful patterns as she spoke, and her voice carried the authority of someone who ruled over 300 star systems. The Kythera had been the dominant military power in the galaxy for over 2,000 years. Beside her sat Trademaster Velnox from the Merchant Guild of Proxima. He looked like a cross between an octopus and a businessman, with 8 tentacles that typed on multiple keyboards simultaneously. His species controlled most of the shipping lanes between star systems, and nothing moved through space without their approval. The session began with routine matters, as always. Elena listened politely while aliens discussed trade routes that humans weren't allowed to use, mining rights on planets humans couldn't visit, and commercial agreements that excluded human businesses. She took careful notes and never interrupted, even when the discussions directly affected Earth's colonies. High Counselor Zixthera eventually turned her attention to the human delegation. Her silver face showed what might have been amusement, though it was hard to tell with Kythera expressions. "Ambassador Vasquez," she said in her melodious voice, "I believe your government submitted several trade proposals for our consideration." Elena stood up respectfully. "Yes, High Counselor. Earth requests permission to establish shipping routes through the Orion Passage, mining rights in the Kepler asteroid belt, and trade agreements with the independent worlds of the Vega system." A ripple of what sounded like laughter went around the chamber. Several delegates exchanged knowing looks. Trademaster Velnox's tentacles writhed in obvious amusement. "How ambitious," Zixthera replied. "However, the Council has concerns about human reliability in long-term commercial relationships. Your species is quite young, and these are complex arrangements that require experienced partners." Elena's expression remained politely neutral. "What specific concerns does the Council have? Earth is prepared to address any issues." High Counselor Zixthera activated a holographic display above the table. It showed shipping routes, trade volumes, and economic data from across the galaxy. The human territories appeared as small blue dots on the edge of civilized space. "Consider the scope of these requests," Zixthera continued. "The Orion Passage handles 17% of all galactic commerce. The Kepler belt contains rare minerals essential to faster-than-light drive construction. The Vega Independents are strategic partners in maintaining regional stability." Trademaster Velnox's voice bubbled through his translation device. "Humans have only been spacefaring for 57 years. Most Council species have been traveling between stars for millennia. Perhaps Earth should focus on smaller opportunities first." Elena smiled her diplomatic smile. "Earth appreciates the, Council's guidance. What smaller opportunities would you recommend?" The suggestions that followed were insults disguised as helpful advice. Humans could transport agricultural waste between farming worlds. They could handle basic maintenance on outdated cargo haulers. They could provide manual labor for mining operations on worlds too dangerous for robotic workers. Elena listened to each suggestion with perfect politeness. She asked clarifying questions and took detailed notes. She thanked each speaker for their input and promised to relay their recommendations to Earth's government. Inside, something cold and hard was growing in her chest. The real insult came when High Counselor Zixathara presented the Human Development Initiative. It was a comprehensive plan to help Earth integrate into galactic civilization through careful mentorship and gradual increases in responsibility. Humans would be assigned to work under alien supervisors on approved projects. Human colonies would accept Kithara advisors to guide their development. Human ships would travel only on routes approved by the Merchant Guild. This initiative represents a significant investment in humanity's future, Zixathara explained. The Council recognizes Earth's potential and wants to ensure proper development. Elena was still taking notes when her wrist communicator vibrated with an encrypted message. She glanced down at the small screen and saw a priority alert from Earth Defense Intelligence. The message was brief but devastating. Package confirmed. 37 facilities. Recommend immediate escalation. Elena's pen stopped moving. She had been expecting this message for 3 weeks, hoping it wouldn't come. Now that it was here, she felt the last piece of her faith in galactic civilization crumble away. The package was the result of a covert investigation that had taken 8 months to complete. Earth's intelligence services had suspected something was wrong with the patterns of human disappearances on frontier colonies. Ships went missing, small outposts went silent, exploration teams failed to report back. The official explanations always involved accidents, equipment failures, or navigation errors. The truth was much worse. The investigation had uncovered a network of illegal operations spanning 12 star systems. Alien criminal organizations were systematically capturing humans for various purposes. Some were sold as exotic slaves to wealthy collectors. Others were used for medical experiments by species curious about human biology. The worst cases involved something called cognitive harvesting, where human brains were kept alive to study human creativity and problem-solving abilities. 37 facilities, hundreds of human victims, men, women, and children from Earth's outer colonies, taken from their homes and families to satisfy alien curiosity or greed. Elena looked up from her communicator to find High Counselor Zixathara watching her expectantly. The Council was waiting for her response to their generous development initiative. High Counselor, Elena said in her quiet, polite voice, I would like to request a brief recess to consult with my government regarding these proposals. Zixathara's silver features showed satisfaction. Of course, Ambassador. Take all the time you need. I'm sure Earth will see the wisdom in accepting guidance from more experienced civilizations. Several delegates chuckled at this. They thought the human was going to call home and ask for permission to surrender her people's independence. They expected her to return with gracious acceptance of whatever scraps they decided to offer. Elena gathered her papers with the same careful precision she had shown for 4 years. She thanked the Council for their patience and walked out of the chamber with perfect diplomatic dignity. The moment the chamber doors closed behind her, Elena's entire demeanor changed. The nervous diplomat disappeared, replaced by something much more dangerous. She walked quickly through the crystal corridors toward the human embassy section, her footsteps sharp and purposeful. The human embassy occupied a small section of Harmony Station's outer ring. It consisted of Elena's office, a communications center, guest quarters, and a supposedly decorative garden area. Most aliens who visited commented on how modest it was compared to other embassies. They never noticed the military-grade shielding, hidden in the walls, or the quantum communication array disguised as decorative crystals in the garden, or the fact that the guest quarters could be rapidly converted into a command center. Elena walked into her private office and activated security protocols that she had never used before. Force fields engaged around the embassy section, jamming devices blocked all electronic surveillance, and combat-rated blast doors sealed every entrance. Within 60 seconds, the human embassy had transformed from a diplomatic outpost into a hardened military facility. Captain Sarah Chen was waiting in Elena's office when the security measures activated. She was a tall woman with short black hair and the lean build of someone who had spent years in zero-gravity combat training. Her uniform bore the insignia of Earth Special Operations Command, but officially she was listed as Elena's cultural attaché. "How bad is it?" Elena asked as she sat down behind her desk. Sarah activated a holographic display that showed a three-dimensional map of local space. Red markers indicated the locations of confirmed illegal facilities. Yellow markers showed suspected sites that intelligence was still investigating. "Worse than we thought," Sarah replied. "The trafficking network extends into 5 different star systems, including 3 that are supposed to be under Kythera protection. We've identified over 400 human victims, with evidence suggesting the operations have been running for at least 2 years." Elena studied the display with growing anger. Many of the facilities were located on worlds that belonged to species sitting in the council chamber. Some were operated directly by government agencies, others by criminal organizations with obvious official protection. "What about rescue operations?" Elena asked. Sarah touched a control, and the display zoomed in on several locations. "Admiral Martinez has positioned Task Force Phoenix within striking distance of 17 facilities. Marine assault teams are standing by for simultaneous raids across all target sites. We can begin operations within 4 hours of your authorization." Elena walked to the window and looked out at the nebula surrounding Harmony Station. For 4 years, she had believed in the possibility of peaceful cooperation with alien civilizations. She had endured condescension, insults, and casual racism because she thought it was worth building relationships with species that could teach humanity about the larger universe. But the larger universe had shown its true face. Behind the polite, diplomatic language and high-minded principles, these civilizations saw humans as resources to be exploited or problems to be managed. They would smile and make speeches about cooperation while their criminals harvested human brains for scientific curiosity. "Sarah," Elena said without turning from the window, "send a priority message to Fleet Admiral Rodriguez. Authorization code Prometheus 77 Alpha." Sarah's eyes widened. Prometheus 77 Alpha was the code for unrestricted military operations against hostile alien forces. It hadn't been used since the first contact protocols were established. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked. "Once we cross this line, there's no going back to pure diplomacy." Elena turned to face her companion. The change in her expression was complete now. Gone was the patient diplomat who had spent 4 years smiling at alien insults. In her place stood someone who looked like she had been carved from ice and steel. "Sarah, do you know why Earth chose me as their primary ambassador to the galactic community?" "Because you're good at building relationships and finding peaceful solutions." "No," Elena replied. "Because I'm very good at recognizing when peaceful solutions are impossible, and because when that moment comes, I know exactly what needs to be done." Elena walked back to her desk and began composing encrypted messages to military commanders across human space. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as she authorized operations that would fundamentally change humanity's relationship with the galaxy. "The aliens in that council chamber think they understand humans because they've seen us being polite for 4 years. Elena continued as she typed. "They think politeness means weakness. They're about to learn that human politeness is just a choice we make when we think cooperation is possible." Sarah watched Elena work with growing understanding. She had served with Elena during the border wars before first contact, when humanity had been fighting for survival against aggressive neighbors in their home system. She had seen Elena command ground operations that saved entire colonies from annihilation. The diplomatic Elena was real, but she was only one part of a much more complex person. The other part was a warrior who had never lost a battle. "What do you want me to tell Admiral Martinez about rules of engagement?" Sarah asked. Elena paused in her typing and looked up with a smile that would have terrified the aliens in the council chamber. "Tell him that the humans are done being polite. Full authorization for any measures necessary to recover our people and neutralize the threat." Within minutes, Encrypted communications were racing across space toward human military units positioned throughout the galaxy. Ships that had been conducting routine patrols suddenly changed course toward predetermined targets. Special forces teams that had been training for hypothetical scenarios received activation orders for real-world operations. And in the depths of space, massive warships that most aliens didn't even know existed began powering up their weapons systems. Elena finished her communications and stood up. In 30 minutes, she would return to the council chamber for the afternoon session. She would sit in her modest chair and listen to more alien speeches about human limitations and the need for proper guidance. But this time would be different. This time, she wouldn't be the polite diplomat trying to build bridges with species that saw humans as inferior. This time she would be delivering an ultimatum to civilizations that had forgotten what humans were capable of when they stopped being diplomatic. Elena straightened her uniform and checked her appearance in the mirror. She looked exactly the same as she had that morning, but everything had changed. The galaxy was about to discover that human politeness wasn't weakness. It was a courtesy that could be withdrawn. When politeness ends, Elena Vasquez walked back into the council chamber exactly 30 minutes after she had left. The alien delegates were engaged in casual conversation, their voices relaxed and confident. They expected the human ambassador to return with her usual diplomatic submission, ready to accept whatever terms they offered. But something was different about Elena now. She moved with a precision that hadn't been there before, her footsteps measured and deliberate. Instead of the slight nervousness that usually marked her movements, she carried herself with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. High Counselor Zix Thera called the session to order, her silver features showing satisfaction.
Welcome back, Ambassador Vasquez. I trust your consultations with Earth were productive? Elena stood behind her podium, but she didn't sit down. Her posture was perfectly straight, hands clasped behind her back like a military officer delivering
a briefing. Yes, High Counselor. Very productive. Before I respond to your development proposals, I'd like to share some information that might interest the Council. Without asking permission, Elena activated the chamber's holographic display system. Several delegates looked surprised at this breach of protocol. Usually, the human asked politely before using any of the chamber's systems. The display showed a star map of local space, but this wasn't the same diplomatic overview they had seen earlier. This map showed ship movements, communication patterns, and facility locations marked with red indicators. Over the past 8 months, Elena began in a voice that carried new authority. Earth's intelligence services have been investigating the disappearance of human civilians from our outer colonies. Missing ships, lost exploration teams, settlements that went silent without explanation. The official reports always cited accidents or equipment failures. Trademaster Velnox's tentacles writhed with what might have been concern. Ambassador, if humans are experiencing difficulties with space travel, the Council would be happy to provide additional guidance on proper safety protocols. Elena's expression didn't change. Thank you for the offer, Trademaster. However, we've discovered that human incompetence isn't the problem. The problem is that several species represented in this chamber have been systematically capturing human civilians for illegal purposes. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Several delegates began speaking at once, their voices raised in indignation and denial. High Counselor Zix Thara struck her ceremonial gavel against the podium to restore order. Ambassador, Zix Thara said with dangerous calm, these are extremely serious accusations. I hope you have substantial evidence to support such claims. Elena touched a control, and the holographic display shifted to show detailed intelligence reports. Photographs of facility exteriors, intercepted communications, financial records, and shipping manifests filled the air above the council table. Facility designation Harvest Point Alpha, Elena said, her voice steady and cold, located on Kepler 442c, in territory controlled by the Nexari Commonwealth. 37 human civilians held for medical experimentation. Men, women, and children from the Titan mining colony that supposedly suffered catastrophic decompression. Last year, Counselor Thekver of the Nexari Commonwealth rose from his seat, his insectoid features showing agitation. This is preposterous. The Nexari would never permit such activities in our territory. Elena's gaze fixed on him with laser intensity. The facility is operated by Nexari Biotech Industries, a subsidiary of your government's medical research division. We have financial records showing payments to criminal organizations for live research subjects and communication logs discussing the unique cognitive properties of human neural tissue. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted denials, demanded to see evidence, and accused Elena of fabricating intelligence to justify human expansion requests. Through it all, Elena stood calmly at her podium, waiting for the noise to subside. High Counselor Zixathera restored order again, but her silver features had taken on a harder edge. Even if these allegations prove accurate, Ambassador, they involve criminal organizations operating outside government oversight. The Council cannot be held responsible for the actions of every independent group within our territories. Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's an interesting distinction, High Counselor. Let me show you something else. The display changed again, this time showing a massive facility built into an asteroid in the Proxima system. The structure was clearly military in nature, with heavy defensive systems and specialized docking bays. Cognitive Research Station Omega, Elena continued, operated jointly by the Kithera Imperial Academy and the Proxima Merchant Guild. 412 human subjects, including 37 children under the age of 10. The research focus is human creativity extraction and replication for use in artificial intelligence systems. The silence that followed was deafening. Trademaster Velnox's tentacles had gone completely still, while High Counselor Zixathera's forearms trembled with barely controlled rage. How did you? Zixathera began, then stopped herself. How did humans obtain classified intelligence from secure facilities? Elena finished. The same way we've been obtaining it for the past 2 years while you've been dismissing us as primitive and harmless. Elena touched another control, and the display showed real-time footage from inside one of the facilities. Human prisoners in laboratory settings, alien scientists conducting experiments, children in holding cells designed to look like playrooms. This footage is being recorded right now, Elena said, at 17 different locations across 5 star systems, facilities that have been operating for over 2 years while this council has been lecturing humans about the need for proper guidance and gradual development. Counselor Thekvar was studying the images with growing horror. Even if these facilities exist, Ambassador, surely you understand that diplomatic channels exist for addressing such concerns. Making accusations in open council is hardly the appropriate. Diplomatic channels? Elena interrupted, her voice rising for the first time. We've been using diplomatic channels for 4 years while you've been treating us like children who need supervision. We've been polite and patient while your people have been harvesting human brains for research projects. Elena walked away from her podium toward the center of the chamber. As she moved, her wrist communicator chimed with an incoming message. She glanced at it and smiled with genuine satisfaction. High Counselor, I have an update on our situation. Earth's response to these discoveries has been comprehensive. The chamber's communication system suddenly activated, displaying an incoming priority transmission. The image that appeared was Admiral Maria Rodriguez, commander of Earth's combined fleet. She was a stern-looking woman in her 50s with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Ambassador Vasquez, Admiral Rodriguez said, I'm pleased to report that Operation Prometheus has been successfully initiated. All 17 targeted facilities have been secured, and human prisoners are being extracted as we speak. The alien delegates stared at the display in shock. Several began frantically operating their own communication devices, trying to contact their home governments. Admiral, Elena replied, what's the status of the extraction teams? All teams report successful insertion with minimal resistance. The aliens clearly weren't expecting coordinated military action. Marine assault teams are currently securing evidence and preparing prisoners for transport to medical facilities. High Counselor Zixathara found her voice first. This is an act of war. Human military forces have attacked sovereign facilities across multiple star systems. Admiral Rodriguez's expression didn't change. High Counselor, Earth's military forces have conducted lawful rescue operations to recover kidnapped civilians. If you consider the liberation of human prisoners to be an act of war, then perhaps you should examine your own definitions of acceptable behavior. Elena walked back to her podium, but she remained standing. Admiral, what's the status of our defensive preparations? Task Force Phoenix is maintaining position in the Orion Passage. Task Force Athena has secured the Kepler Belt. Task Force Ares is providing escort for civilian evacuation from vulnerable colonies. All units report ready for combat operations if required. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. While the aliens had been discussing human development initiatives, Earth had been positioning military forces throughout the disputed territories. Trade Master Velnox's voice bubbled with panic. How many ships does Earth have in space right now? Admiral Rodriguez smiled grimly. Enough. Elena gestured for the communication to end, and Admiral Rodriguez's image disappeared. The chamber remained silent as the alien delegates processed what they had just witnessed. For 4 years, Elena said, her voice carrying across the chamber, Earth has participated in this council with patience and diplomacy. We've accepted insults, condescension, and deliberate exclusion because we believed in the possibility of peaceful cooperation. Elena activated the display again, showing the locations of human military forces throughout local space. The map revealed a coordinated deployment that must have taken months to organize. But cooperation requires good faith from all parties, Elena continued. While we've been trying to build relationships, you've been harvesting our people for experiments. While we've been asking for trade routes, you've been studying our children to understand human creativity. High Counselor Zix Thera was studying the tactical display with growing alarm. Ambassador, surely we can resolve this situation through negotiation, perhaps reparations for the victims, criminal prosecutions for those responsible. High Counselor, Elena interrupted. I want you to understand something very clearly. The polite diplomatic Elena Vasquez, who has been sitting in this chamber for 4 years, was real. She genuinely wanted to build peaceful relationships with alien civilizations. She believed that patience and respect could overcome prejudice and fear. Elena walked to the center of the chamber where all the delegates could see her clearly. But that Elena Vasquez was also a choice. A decision to emphasize one aspect of human nature over others. You've been so focused on human politeness that you forgot what humans are like when we're not being polite. She gestured to the tactical display. This is what humans are like when politeness fails. When we discover that patience is being interpreted as weakness. When we learn that our children are being experimented on while we're being lectured about proper development. The chamber's communication system activated again, this time showing multiple incoming priority messages from across the galaxy. Reports were flooding in about human military actions at facilities in Kythera, Nexari, and Proxima territories. The facilities have been neutralized, Elena announced. Every human prisoner has been recovered alive. The evidence of illegal activities has been secured, and the galaxy now knows that Earth is not the helpless, primitive world you thought it was. Counselor Thekvar was reviewing reports from his government with growing distress. Ambassador, my people are reporting that human forces destroyed 3 major research installations without any warning or opportunity for surrender. Your people, Elena replied coldly, were torturing children. Did you expect us to send a polite letter requesting that you stop? Elena walked back to her podium and gathered her papers. The Council has a choice to make now. You can continue treating humans as inferior beings who need guidance, in which case you'll discover that we're very good at providing our own guidance. Or you can recognize that Earth is a sovereign power with the right to protect its citizens and pursue its interests. High Counselor Zix Thera's 4 arms moved in agitation. Ambassador, what exactly are you proposing? I'm not proposing anything, Elena replied. I'm informing you of the new reality. The Orion Passage is now under human control. The Kepler Belt is now under human protection. The Vega Independents have requested Earth's assistance in maintaining their sovereignty. Elena activated the display one more time, showing the updated political map of local space. Human-controlled territories had expanded dramatically, secured by military force and defended by fleets that the aliens hadn't known existed. The trafficking networks have been completely destroyed, Elena continued. The criminals responsible are either dead or in human custody. The evidence of their activities has been distributed to news organizations across the galaxy. Trademaster Velnox's tentacles writhed frantically. The economic disruption alone could destabilize trade relationships across multiple sectors. Then perhaps you should have considered the economic consequences before allowing human civilians to be kidnapped and experimented on, Elena replied. Elena closed her folder and prepared to leave. This council has spent 4 years debating whether humans are ready for full participation in galactic civilization. Today you have your answer. We're not asking for permission anymore. As Elena walked toward the chamber doors, High Counselor Zixathera called out behind her, "Ambassador, what happens now? Where does this leave diplomatic relations between our species?" Elena paused at the doorway and turned back to face the chamber. That depends entirely on how quickly you learn to treat humans as equals instead of pets. The polite, patient Elena Vasquez is still here, High Counselor. But she's not the only option anymore. Elena walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a room full of alien delegates who were just beginning to understand how completely their world had changed. The humans were no longer asking for permission to exist in the galaxy. They were announcing their presence as equals. Within hours, the news had spread across civilized space. Earth had revealed military capabilities that matched or exceeded those of the major powers. Human forces had conducted successful operations in multiple star systems simultaneously. The trafficking networks that had preyed on human civilians for years had been completely destroyed in a single coordinated strike. The HFY Galaxy was learning that human politeness had been a choice, not a weakness, and when that choice was withdrawn, the results were swift, decisive, and terrifying. The Council had laughed at Earth's requests for equality. They had dismissed human concerns as the complaints of a primitive species. They had treated human lives as resources to be exploited or problems to be managed. Now they were discovering what happened when humans stopped being polite and started being honest about their capabilities. The diplomatic mask had come off, revealing something that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The age of human subservience was over. The age of human equality had begun. And it had begun with a quiet woman in a navy blue uniform, who had simply stopped smiling and started speaking the truth.